Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Karola and in today's video I'm gonna show you step by step how to sew the vintage love blouse. It has a relaxed fit. The original version of this pattern comes with long sleeve and a shirred cuff, but you can adjust them if you want to make the sleeve shorter. It comes with a front buttoning placket and a back knife pleat. The final touch of this blouse is an oversized Peter Pan collar with a ruffle. To make this blouse, you will need your self fabric. Fabrics with bigger percentage of polyester will hold better the pleats. Also, you will need heat transfer fuse. I will be using a medium weight interfacing for woven fabrics. In a case that you want a stiffer cuff, you could use a sew-on interlining, regular sewing thread, elastic thread that you will use in the bobbin to shear the fabric, 5 to 6 buttons with 1 inch of diameter. And finally, the pattern pieces. This pattern is linked below and it's available in US sizes from 4 to 22. It comes in 2 different files to allow you to print at a print shop or at home. Don't forget to check the handbook for further instructions and information. And if you need an extra visual support, you can check my video of how to assemble the pages when you print your patterns at home. We will start prepping our fabric by ironing with enough steam to pre-shrink it. This Peter Pan collar is conformed by an upper collar, the one that is visible on the outside, and the under collar, the one that is underneath. The under collar is a crucial component in achieving a polished and professional finish to the garment. For that reason, I'm going to show you how to transform the upper collar into an under collar. Start by tracing your upper collar in a new piece of paper. Mark a line 1/8 of an inch inside the outer edge of the traced pattern, and then draw a gradually tapering line from this mark to 0 at the neckline. Connect these reduction lines smoothly along the outer edge. Transfer all the notches, marking, and all the information from the upper collar, and then cut out the new undercollar pattern piece. Ensure the pattern piece is symmetrical by folding it in half and marking any necessary adjustments. Finally, label your new piece as an undercollar. For this blouse, you will need 1 upper collar piece and 1 undercollar piece. Following the grain line, place and pin your patterns. Then cut them following your size and the instructions listed on each piece. Remember to transfer all the notches, darts, and mark points from the patterns to your fabric. The front placket piece and the upper collar must be cut also in interlining. For a stiffer collar, you can add fuse also to the undercollar as well. To get a more professional finish and avoid bulky seams, trim 1/8 of an inch around the whole edge of the fuse collar piece. And also trim 1/8 of an inch on the edges of the front placket fuse piece. Now, using your iron, add heat transfer fusing to the wrong side of the fabric on the upper collar piece and the front placket pieces. Just to keep in mind, on heat transfer fuse, the rough side is the one that contains the glue. So this is the side that must face the wrong side of the fabric. Cut fuse excess if you have any. And now pre-crease your placket by folding it in half lengthwise with wrong side facing, and use your iron to add a lot of steam to keep the folding in place. Before I start sewing, I'm going to transfer my darts from the pattern to the fabric, and to do so I'm going to use chalk paper and my tracing wheel. I'm going to transfer the complete dart to my fabric because I find this method is the most accurate, but also you can use the drill holes and just transfer drill holes and notches from the darts. And then with right size facing, I'm just gonna fold my dart. I'm gonna use some pins to keep it in place, and then I'm just gonna sew it. In this case, I back tack at the beginning of my seam, and then I'm just gonna continue sewing all the way until I get to the tip of the dart. Without stopping, sew a few stitches beyond the tip of the dart, about 1/4 of an inch. This will twist the threads and will lock the stitch. Now I'm pressing my darts downwards using a hand cushion or a curved surface to keep the shape of the bust. Now I'm going to continue working in my front piece, and I'm going to attach the outer edge of the front placket to the center front piece, facing right side together and using 1/2 inch of seam allowance. And now I'm going to press this previous seam allowance towards the interior of the placket. On the outer edge, the one that is not attached to the bodice, I'm going to fold up 1/2 inch and I'm going to press it to keep it in place. I'm going to do this along the whole placket. Now I'm going to fold my placket in half and I'm going to close it towards the wrong side of the fabric. I'm going to use my previous seams as a reference to match my new folding line with that seam. Adding some steam to this area might be helpful to keep the placket in place. To finally close my placket, I'm going to run a straight stitch as close as possible to the inner fold of my placket. I will repeat the same steps on the other side. Now I'm going to work on my back piece, my back pattern, and I'm going to start by folding the knife pleat located on the center back bodice. To do this, I'm going to follow the notches and the direction that is listed on the patterns, and you could use some pins to help you keeping the folds in place. Just keep in mind that the pleat is folded towards the center back. And now I'm going to give it a good press, and I will suggest you to stay stitched at the upper edge of the fabric to keep the pleat in place. Now I'm going to install my yoke, and since this is a clean finish yoke, I'm going to have 2 yoke pieces. And I'm going to start by placing one yoke piece facing right sides with my pattern piece. Next, I'm going to take my second yoke piece and I'm going to place it with right side facing up, and I'm going to line the right side of the yoke with the wrong side of the back pattern piece. I'm going to align the 3 layers of fabric, which means that my back bodice piece will be sandwiched in between both yoke pieces. And then I'm just going to stitch the 3 layers of fabric together using 1/2 inch of seam allowance. And now I'm going to press the yoke seam. This is something that I normally do after each seam that I sew. I always press it to help with the finish, and automatically you see how the pieces start changing. Here you can see how the wrong side of the fabric looks, and this is what clean finish means. You don't see any seams, they are enclosed in between the yokes, and this is a common technique used in dressing shirts. Now I'm going to run a top stitch along my yoke line, and it's going to be, I'm going to be using 1/4 of an inch of seam allowance or a lesser foot of distance from my yoke line. This top stitching is optional, but I highly recommend it. To sew the shoulders, I'm going to face right side together of the front pattern piece with the back pattern piece, and I'm going to line both of them at the shoulder line. Now I'm going to apply the burrito technique, which means that I'm going to be bundling my fabric. I'm going to be rolling the main body pieces front and back together until I reach to the point where I can see my under yoke. Once I'm there, I'm going to align both yoke pieces together at the shoulder line. By doing this, you will be sandwiching your main body pieces in between the yoke. I'm going to repeat the same procedure on the other side of my shoulders, and as I say, I'm using pins to keep them in place, and I'm making sure that I'm not catching any extra fabric that don't belong to the shoulder. Then I'm gonna go to my machine and using 1/2 inch of seam allowance, I'm gonna stitch my shoulders together. Now I'm gonna flip my piece inside out, and this is how it looks on the right side, and this is how it looks on the wrong side of the fabric. To finish my shoulders, I'm going to give them a good press using a curved surface to keep the shape. And now with right side face seam, I'm gonna sew my side seams using 1/2 inch of seam allowance. Since we just assembled our main body piece, it's the right time to try it on. Remember that this pattern is made in intermediate size to fit an average of bodies, but sometimes adjustments are necessary. So this is the right time to check your size seam in case it needs adjustment, the position of the dart, your shoulders, even the hem. Once you're happy with the result, you can continue to the next step that will be serging or side seams. I'm gonna serge them close and I'm gonna press them towards the back. Now I'm gonna place the two color ruffle pieces right sides together and I'm gonna sew them using 1/4 inch of seam allowance. Now I'm gonna press my seam open, and next I'm gonna fold the ruffle in half lengthwise with the right side facing out. I will press along the fold to keep it in place. With the longest stitch length available in your machine, sew 2 rows of long basting stitches along the raw edge, leaving long thread tails. Now pull the bobbin long thread tails that we left to gather the ruffle to match the length of the collar outer edge, distributing the gathers evenly. And now I'm going to attach the gathered ruffle to the outer edge of the upper collar piece. I'm going to stay stitched to keep it in place, and with the tip of my iron I'm gonna press it on the edge to reduce the bulkiness of the seam. Now place the under collar on top, facing right side together, sandwiching the ruffle detail between the layers. Sew around the outer collar edge using 1/2 inch of seam allowance and leaving the neckline edge open. Trim the seam allowance by 1/4 inch and clip the curved area. Turn the collar right side out and add an optional top stitching on the edge. Now I'm gonna place my collar facing right side up, and I'm gonna line the raw edge of the collar with the raw edge of the body's neckline. I'm gonna make sure I'm start attaching the collar 1 inch in to the neckline, so I'm gonna have that inch free to add my buttons. And I'm gonna be pinning the collar on top of the bodice to keep it in place. Now I'm gonna baste or stay stitch around the neckline. This will temporarily hold the collar in place but also prevent the neckline from stretching. To finish the neckline, I'm gonna use bias tape, and I'm gonna create this bias tape with my own fabric. To do so, I'm gonna cut a couple of strips of fabric on the bias. I recommend you to cut the bias on your remains of fabric. So the width of the strip should be 1.5 inches and the length will depend on the amount of fabric that you have available. Bias can waste a lot of fabric, so with this technique you don't need a long strip, you need a couple of them because we are gonna join them together. Now I'm gonna sew these strips together end to end, placing them right side together at 90-degree angle, and I'm gonna sew across where they overlap. Now I'm gonna press my seams open, and I'm gonna trim any excess that I could have on my seams. Then I'm gonna fold the strip in half lengthwise, facing wrong sides together, and I will press again to form my bias tape. Now I trim my edge at 90 degrees to clean the bias tape. To do this, I'm just gonna fold it in half, facing right side together, and I'm gonna stitch it using 1/4 inch of seam allowance. Then I'm gonna trim the excess, and I'm gonna flip my bias tape over again. Now I'm going to align the two raw edges of the bias tape with the raw edges of the collar and the body's neckline. I'm going to make sure I'm facing right side together. I will sew along using 1/4 of an inch of seam allowance, finishing the outer edge in the same way we previously did. Now I'm going to understitch the bias tape by sewing the seam allowance to the bias tape close to the seam. This will help the bias tape to lay flat and remain inside when folded over. Fold the bias tape over to the inside of the garment, covering all raw edges, and press it down flat. And now I'm going to edge stitch close to the loose edge. I'm going to make sure to move the collar out of the way when sewing, since this final stitch must be only on the bodies. Now I'm going to take my cuff patterns and I'm going to make a fine double turn on the outer edge. I'm going to fold the edge over by 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to press and then I'm going to fold it over again by another 1/4 of an inch. I will press again and I'm going to stitch it close to the inner fold. Wind the elastic thread onto the bobbin by hand, adding consistent tension. Use a regular thread in the needle and the elastic thread in your bobbin, and set your machine to a longer stitch length. With the cuff fabric right side up, sew multiple parallel rows around the cuff, spacing them evenly and stretching the fabric slightly as you sew to create the shearing effect. Each row is 1/4 inch wide, so you can mark those lines on the fabric, use the pattern, or use the presser foot as a guide. When reaching the edge of the fabric, sew at least 2 or 3 stitches into the seam allowance. Leave the needle in the fabric, lift the presser foot, turn the fabric, and sew a couple of stitches until you reach the desired width of the row. Then pivot the fabric again and continue sewing in the opposite direction. Make sure you repeat the same procedure until all rows are completed. Now I'm going to fold my cuff in half, facing right side together, and I'm going to sew the side ends using 1/2 inch of seam allowance. Finally, I'm going to serge my seams close and I'm going to press them towards the back. Now I'm going to sew the underarm seams by aligning the sleeve seams with right sides together. I'm going to sew along using 1/2 inch of seam allowance, and I'm going to finish my seam by serging it close and pressing it to the back. Using the longest stitch available in your machine, sew 2 rows of long basting stitches, leaving long thread tails along the hem of the sleeves. Gently pull the bobbin threads until the sleeve hem matches the circumference of the cuff. Now pin the cuff to the sleeve hem with right sides together, matching the seams and evenly distributing any gathers. Sew around using 1/2 inch of seam allowance and then finish the seam allowance with a serger. Press the seams towards the sleeve for a neat finish. Sew 2 rows of long basting stitches along the sleeve cap between the notches and leave long thread tails for gathering. Gently pull the bobbin basting threads to gather the sleeve cap until it fits the armhole smoothly. Make sure you distribute the gathers evenly. Now pin the gathered sleeve cap in place and sew around the armhole with a regular stitch at 1/2 inch of seam allowance. Finish the seam allowance with a serger and press the seams towards the sleeve for a neat finish. To finish your hem, mark 1.5 inches up. This will be our hem allowance, and you could either clean the hem doing a double turn, or you can use a serging machine and then just fold the 1.5 inch up. At this point, the only thing left in our garment are the buttons and buttonholes. So we're going to start by marking the buttonholes placements on the bottom placket of the blouse as indicated on the patterns. Although buttons and buttonholes placement is already indicated, I recommend you trying the blouse on and closing the bottom placket with pins at the marked bottom position to ensure it sits correctly. Adjustments might be necessary, especially for fuller bust, which might require positioning the buttons closer together in that area. This method helps achieve a better fit and prevents gapping. Keep in mind that for women's wear, the industry standard is for buttonholes to be located on the right side when wearing the shirt and the buttons to be located on the left side. This means that when the shirt lays flat in front of you, facing up, the buttonholes will be on the left side and the buttons on the right side. Next, set your sewing machine to the buttonhole stitch setting. Follow the machine's instructions to create each buttonhole. Remember that each machine is different in terms of how the buttonholes are created. Some of them have a special presser foot, so take all this into consideration before starting and carefully sewing along the marked lines till you complete all the buttons. Once all your buttonholes are completed, it's time to open them. Place a pin just before the top buttonhole edge, and by using a seam ripper, open carefully the center of each buttonhole. Trim any fabric excess if needed, and get ready to the final step, which will be sewing our buttons by hand. To do so, I'm gonna close my placket by positioning the buttonhole placket on top of the bottom placket, as it will be when finished. I'm gonna secure it with pins, and once I'm happy with the position and everything sits right, I'm gonna transfer the center mark of each buttonhole onto the bottom placket, which will be the position where I'm gonna sew my actual buttons. The buttons that I'm using already have a shank included, so to attach them to my blouse, what I'm gonna do first is thread my needle with double thread so I can make it a little bit stronger, and I'm gonna make a knot at the end. Then I'm gonna position the button over the spot that I just marked, and I'm gonna push the needle up from the underside of the fabric through one of the holes in the shank. Repeat these steps as needed. Remember that this part of the blouse will have so much stress because you will be buttoning and unbuttoning the buttons constantly, so it's important to make it secure. Then loop the thread through the shank a few times, pulling it tight, push the needle back through the fabric and close the entry point. And as you can see here, I'm repeating the stitches through the shank several times to make sure that it's secure. And at the end, what I'm gonna do is just knot the thread on the underside of the fabric, and I'm gonna trim any excess.